welcome to everyone. In the next few minutes, I would like to talk about my PhD theme, investigation of executive function in infant cerebral palsy, and about my progress of my researches. My name is Nóra Zimonyi. I'm a conductor and a PhD student. I work at András Pető practicing primary school, Semmelweis University. But what's going on within the walls of the famous Pető Institute? The conductors don't direct music bands, but help and teach children with cerebral palsy. Conductive education is a complex method in which we also develop movement, personality, and cognitive functions, thus helping to create a more independent lifestyle for people with CP. So in the future, I would like to live in a world with citizens with CP are a productive and integral part of society, where they would be able to find a more effective job in the world of work, which could help their social integration and participation in society. I'm a conductor, it's my vocation, therefore I would like to develop the skills of the patients with cerebral palsy. I'm fully committed to a more targeted development program for people with CP that could also improve their quality of life. We are currently working on 2 projects in order to get to know executive functions of people with cerebral palsy. The title of the first project is a comparison of executive function test results between patients with infant cerebral palsy and typically developing population. First of all, let me tell a few words about executive functions. These are a set of mental skills that including working memory, flexibility, and inhibition control. We use these skills every day to learn, work, and manage daily life. Trouble with executive function can make it hard to focus, follow directions, and hand emotions, and among other things. You may ask, why do we want to examine the executive functions in this population? Let's start with what is cerebral palsy. While it is a blanket term commonly described as loss or impairment of motor functions, cerebral palsy is actually caused by brain damage. Children with cerebral palsy may have problems with movements and walking difficulty, speaking, learning difficulties, and cognitive impairments. Several studies have been performed on the movement of people with CP, but we don't know much about their executive functions. However, these are important for the school and life success. Therefore, the aim is to examine the executive functions of people with cerebral palsy. What is the results of executive functions testing cerebral palsy and how it differs from the typically developing population? This is the clinical question, and you can see the PECO, and we have 2 hypotheses. As I said before, the conductive education is a complex method in which we also develop movement, personality, and cognitive functions. By gaining more knowledge about the executive function of people with CP, we can set up a more complex development program based on the results. Based on the results, we can find out whether the operation of the executive functions in CPs is affected, and if so, which component, working memory, flexibility, inhibitory control needs to be improved. Targeted development can improve their school performance and their well-being and their success in life. I searched for databases. I worked with this search key. The duplication removal and the title abstract selection is done. The full text selection is in progress. The second project will be to analyze and publish the results of a research. This research was made some years before. It's a descriptive cross-sectional study about the executive function in two groups, children with cerebral palsy and typically developing children. We have the necessary approvals. On the CP group, the inclusion criteria was the diagnosis of cerebral palsy with ICD code. If exclusion criteria was if the child had any psychological disorder and epilepsy. The control group matched to the CP sample by age and gender. They were typically developing children, while exclusion criteria was the similar in the cerebral palsy group. What are the strengths and limitations of this research? The sample size larger than previous researches, even if we couldn't take the whole test with everyone. This study contains 7 tests. Most articles used 3-4 tests. Furthermore, this is the first study what comprehensively examined the CP population. It is a non-multi-strand study because special equipment was needed to measure performance. The first figure showed the gender distribution of cerebral palsy group. We used the gross motor function classification system, where level 1 means the mildest and level 5 means the most severe movement conditional. Test recordings were made at all 5 levels. We used this test, you can see above. As I said before, we couldn't take every test with everyone. For example, we didn't take the Stroop test with children who couldn't read well. So we had 54 participants. There were children who started taking the test but dropped out because we found some problem during the process. Here you can see the progress of the second project. The database is ready for the analysis. The descriptive statistics have been started, and this is the first part, and that will be continued with the test results. Planned submissions dates are at the next year, April and May. I would like to close my presentation with this code below, because it is completely in line with conductive education, my vocation, and every child means every child, including kids with cerebral palsy.
Can you tell us something about this executive function? What does it mean? Which cognitive part of the human function is?
Yes, the executive function is a cognitive functions, working memory, flexibility, and inhibitory functions. And if I have other presentation time, it's very good because it's a really big part of the cognitive functions. So it's if had any problem with the executive functions, it's problem with for example the daily manage or the planning, the daily routine, or the learning in the learning and in the work. Yes.
How did you collect the typically developed children? There was any other exclusion or inclusion criteria that they are typically developed? So did you prove somehow that they are really typically developed?
No, so the exclusion criteria was if the child had any psychological disorder, and we choose a primary and grammar school in Budapest that is average on basis of the competence measurements.
Do you have perhaps further plans? Because your study is finished, or the data are analyzed. Would you like to continue, or how and in which way?
I would like to continue, maybe with other CP's group, because as I said before, the executive functions research is in the CP group. It's a gap, so I would like to fill in this gap.